What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Jenks Island podcast, the only NFL podcast where you get your takes from a washed-up Division III cornerback and his friends. I'm your host, Grayson Jenkins, joined again by my great friend and co-host, Ty. And in today's episode, we're going to be breaking down NFL free agency 2026, giving our predictions of the top 20 free agents of this class. In our eyes, we kind of view it as impact, things like there's a lot of different things that go into this list. There's some guys that maybe you think should be on this list, but because of age or impact, things like that, they're not. So completely subjective here in the list of guys that we chose, but our predictions we think are valuable to you guys listening out there. But anyway, starting off, we're going to start right off with the quarterbacks, one of the biggest positions in the NFL. And this year, it actually was a pretty exciting class for free agents because of teams dropping guys or the potential of trades, things like that. There's only a few teams that are really going to be open for quarterbacks this year. So that's what makes this discussion so interesting. Ty, starting off with Malik Willis here. Where do you have him going? Malik Willis.
I got Malik Willis going to Atlanta. I think there's a bunch of options for him. There's been Miami's been rumored, Arizona's been rumored. There's the Browns, maybe the Jets, right? There's a couple teams with open QB spots, but I chose to put him in the position where I think he can compete right away. I think Atlanta has a trove of weapons around him, right? With Drake London, with possibly I think they tagged Kyle Pitts. They got Bijan Robinson, a pretty good offensive line, and a young defense with Kevin Stefanski coming in as a kind of, he's considered kind of a QB guru in some sense, right? He's not like the blanking on the Vikings coach, but he's not like McVay. He's not like any of those guys, right? He is still
Kevin O'Connell, right?
Kevin O'Connell, yeah. I was going to say O'Donnell, but that's not his name. But Stefanski, right? He's had a lot of success with quarterbacks in his career, and I think Malik Willis can go in there. He kind of fits the vibe of that team too. I think they would be able to kind of, do a lot of run and gun with him, some RPO action because he's super athletic. Him and Bijan Robinson on a read option or an RPO with Drake London is just a scary, scary thought. So I think Malik Willis, his best fit to compete right away would be in Atlanta. And you saw he was able to compete this past season with Green Bay, a playoff team.
Yeah, that's an interesting spot, especially with Michael Penix still there. And people are going to say, like, be listening or watching and say, well, they have Michael Penix. Why would they go get a quarterback? The new era in Atlanta has completely reestablished and reset up this team for a completely new beginning, right? Because Michael Penix was under the old regime. This new regime comes in, they can get whoever the hell they want and not feel like they are letting anyone down in that organization. They will go out and get a quarterback if they think he's better than Michael Penix. And I could definitely see that as being a spot. I did go with Miami for Malik Willis simply because Jeff Hafley's over there now. A little bit of familiarity there with coaching, things like that. And Jeff Hafley's defensive, right? But familiarity as a coach and the coaching system that he's bringing over, a couple other assistants. So I will say that Malik Willis, Miami fits, and I believe Miami has a lot of salary or a decent amount of salary cap. Oh, actually, they've cleared
it, but they've cleared out a decent amount over the past couple, days. So I don't know exactly where they stand right now. I mean,
they're going to keep clearing it too. They're trying to completely reset. This is a reset year for them too, right? And I think with a team like Miami, it sets up Malik Willis for a fresh start. And there were a couple other teams in the mix here too. Obviously the Browns, I don't really see the Browns necessarily going after him with, I think they'll just keep the young quarterback Shadur and Dylan Gabriel, maybe draft one. But I think the Dolphins are a good spot for him going into this season. But the Falcons, not a bad choice, Ty. That really surprised me you said them. So moving on. Sorry, go ahead, Ty. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the one piece that makes Miami a little bit tougher is what they decide to do with Tua, right? If they decide to cut him, all that dead cap, definitely, the way that we're looking at the salary cap right now, we're saying they don't have a ton. If they cut Tua, the dead cap, it really starts to muck stuff up. And there's been talks about that, maybe just keeping him on the roster as a backup and, just holding on to the money that he makes and not making it worse with the dead cap. So that'll be interesting to see how that transpires over the next couple of days and really decides if Malik Willis can go to Miami or not.
Yeah. Moving on, we have Kyler Murray here, 29 years old, right? A little bit under the radar right now. Teams, I don't think the buzz around Kyler Murray is as big as it should be because I think Kyler Murray's been overhated the last couple of seasons and he hasn't had the greatest system around him. His receivers have really let him down. I mean, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., right? And he's severely underplayed what everyone expected his career to be to this point. And then Kyler Murray comes out, gets released, and there's a couple teams that I see as really good fits for him. One is going to be the Jets. The second is going to be the Vikings, even though that's not necessarily the usual fit for that team. He's a little bit smaller, not necessarily the pocket passer for Kevin O'Connell, but I think he opens up the offense and he will be able to get the ball to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and the rest of the weapons there in Minnesota. The dark horse team that I just want to put out there would be hilarious is if he went to a team like the Rams and just sat for a year. Just sat, because he's not going to have to get paid this year, right? Very much at all. If he just goes and sits and then succeeds Matt Stafford, something like that, it would be immediate relief for the Rams not having to worry about finding their future quarterback for Stafford, and it gives them a good opportunity. But those are three teams, but I think the Jets are really the team that makes the most sense for him. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got him going to Minnesota. I think it's an awesome spot for him. We're going there with Kevin O'Connell, who's reclamated a lot of quarterbacks over his career, right? He did, Daniel Jones had to stop there before he went to Indianapolis. They had the Sam Darnold, right? So I think him going there with the weapons that they have, anywhere that he goes though, is immediately probably a better roster than he's ever had in Arizona. Arizona has the worst roster in the NFL and has never supported him with top tier talent, right? They've taken guys at the top, but guys like Marvin Harrison have failed, right? James Conner, couldn't stay healthy at times. They had Trey McBride, obviously, who really broke out within the past couple of years, but he's never had an awesome offensive line. He's never had a great defense, right? Like the support around Kyler Murray has never been great. I really think that this is a guy that takes, that kind of Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield step. And it's not like there's been questions about, like, is Kyler Murray a top 15 quarterback in the past couple of years? Like, he teeters on that kind of in that, like, probably 13 to 18 range. Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were viewed as, like, not even starting level quarterbacks, right? So you get Kyler Murray, all the potential that he has with Kevin O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison, Jordan Mason in the backfield. I think that it's they could run the AFC North. I know NFC North. I know there's Chicago's really good there, and Green Bay's obviously really good. But with Brian Flores, running that defense, and with Kevin O'Connell getting Kyler Murray, an athletic guy, a quarterback that you mentioned, right? It's not the typical quarterback that they've had in this offense, but you add that dynamic piece of the run game with him, I think that this team could be really, really good. So I got him going to Minnesota.
And that's an underrated underrated thing for Justin Jefferson, right? And Jordan Addison. If he starts scrambling around, Justin Jefferson's a good receiver at finding space and making plays happen and getting open after the scramble drills, things like that. That would add even more explosiveness to the offense, just of the unknown variety for the Vikings.
Addison too. I mean, he played with Caleb Williams in college, and Caleb Williams is the king of breaking out of the pocket and making something out of nothing. And Addison had to do that all the time with Caleb. So.
Yeah, both of those guys would definitely excel with Kyler Murray in that offense. And moving on, Ty, real quick before we get into the running back conversation, just a team, you mentioned the Vikings with Jordan Mason. Do you think the Vikings, and I'm not necessarily talking about either of the guys we're just about to talk about, but do you think the Vikings stick with Jordan Mason, or do you think they're going to go after a running back in this free agency class?
Yeah, I think they'll stick with Jordan Mason. He showed some upside and promise with Aaron Jones out last year, and obviously he had some success in San Francisco before that too. So I think he's a young guy that can really, lead this backfield for them. I think it was a smart move to get rid of Aaron Jones. I kind of forgot about Jordan Mason because that team wasn't great and they were splitting carries. But, when I started to think about getting rid of Aaron Jones, I thought Jordan Mason made a lot of sense as a lead back for them. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, he had just like a quick glance at his stats, 758 yards on 159 attempts. And he wasn't the main back. He wasn't featured all the time, but he made some big plays for them at times throughout the last season. And he could easily step in and be
who else had 750 yards? David Montgomery. And he's viewed as the starting running back in Houston. And so I think, Jordan Mason has more upside. He's a younger guy too. So.
Yeah, and David Montgomery, like everyone's talking about that as like now David Montgomery is going to be some beast for fantasy, and Jordan Mason's going a little bit under the radar. So I do think that's a good spot for him just to stay, then keep Jordan Mason and stay with him as the running back one for next season. But getting into these running backs we had for you guys, starting off, we have Kenneth Walker. Ty, where do you have Kenneth Walker going?
Yeah, I got him coming to the Mile High, baby. I think, Denver's going to make a splash at the running back position. That's kind of been all the rumors. And the teams that have been in on Kenneth, allegedly, obviously the legal tampering period has started, but it's Denver, it's Kansas City, and it's Seattle possibly re-signing him. Seattle's got a lot of other, guys to re-sign, I think, and they have Sharp, and they've kind of tried to push Kenneth out over the past couple of years, giving Sharp more and more carries. And I think Kansas City also has some bigger needs and is not going to be able to allocate their cap to Kenneth Walker. And I have them getting a couple other guys on this list too. So it really pushes, the running back position out of their, kind of free agency window, at least a premier running back. So I got him coming to Denver. I think Denver's in the, like I said, in the market for a running back. J.K. Dobbins was obviously huge for us when he was healthy last year, but missed a ton of time. And so I think we're looking for a little bit more of a reliable running back and someone that can really prop up Bo Nix and make his life a lot easier. So I got Kenneth coming to the Broncos.
Yeah, I definitely have the Broncos going after a top tier running back in this free agency class, and I have them going after the next guy we're going to talk about. But the team I had for Kenneth Walker, and you're not going to like it, but it would be the Chiefs if they decide to go after running back. I think that he would be a great fit for them, similar to the Isaiah Pacheco mold of just go get and be a power back for that team versus having to rely on him in the pass game. They didn't use Isaiah Pacheco in that aspect too much, but they needed him to do it at sometimes, and Kenneth Walker can still do that. He would be a great fit for them. And I think,
better than Pacheco.
Yeah, way better than Pacheco. But I think the thing for the Chiefs is they don't want to rely on going into the draft and having the mindset of we're going to go get Jeremiah Love, because it's not a sure thing that Jeremiah Love's going to be there at 9, right? I think it's a really, really tough chance. Though after the combine, it just really doesn't seem like it. And really the only chance I think they would have is if they traded up with the new first round draft pick that they now have. And Ty, I know you'd be ecstatic with that because that messes up things of you're not getting as many talented players if you trade up. Yes, Jeremiah Love is an impact player, but if you go get Kenneth Walker with whatever remaining salary cap you have and then focus on the draft in other places and build talent around the rest of the team, I think that would be the best bet for them. So I have Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs.
I'll say this about Kansas City, though. I thought about them too, right? I think it's obviously between Denver and Kansas City at this point in time. And I thought about them for some of these the next running back we're going to talk about too. They historically, especially under the Andy Reid era, have been a draft in the middle rounds, like day 2, early day 3, draft a running back or try to get a bargain guy.
Yeah.
Maybe they changed the mold there. But it gave me some pause on both of these running backs because of that. And I think that this running back class is deeper in the middle range, right? I think there's Jeremiah Love and then it kind of drops off, but there's good guys in that 3rd to 4th round range that I think Andy Reid might think, okay, we can target them. And they have Rashard Smith, who had some success this past season. But I see the Kenneth Walker thing. I do think it's between Denver and Kansas City, but that's why I had some pause on giving him away to Kansas City.
No, I definitely think that's fair. The only thing I have with that is just that I just feel like there's no way they can let it go another season of middle round drafting that, because of last season, it just looked so terrible from the running back position. That was truly what killed. It was one of the huge factors that killed their offense. Obviously their offensive line wasn't great either. That was a big deal, but their running game was it was so abysmal. And you really had to depend on Mahomes in the passing game with limited receivers. And so I just think getting that running back would really help. And it could be the next guy they're about to talk about, Travis Etienne. A little bit older than Kenneth Walker, right? He's going to be 27 going into next season. A team that I had him going to, I mentioned this just a second ago, I have him going to the Broncos. I think the Broncos do go after a running back. Travis Etienne is a very solid running back. I don't know if he's not a 1A class tier running back. I don't think he's in that top tier, like the top 5 to top 8 guys. I think he's in that 8 to maybe 14 range of running backs in the NFL at this point in time, but he's really good. He can be a receiving back. He can be an up the middle back. He can run outside zone, outside scheme, run game stuff, but you can do a little bit of everything. I just think that's a good fit to be above RJ Harvey, who's also a little bit older for, him going into his 2nd season. I think it would be a good fit for the Broncos and what Sean Payton used to want to do. Now being in Davis Webb's hands, we'll see if that scheme fits for Etienne. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it, and I talked about this on the Orange Crushing podcast the other day. Like, he just kind of is redundant with what RJ Harvey does. He's not as much of that between the tackles runner, and I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
Sean and this offense, Sean's not calling plays, obviously, but Davis is still going to be, there's going to be heavy emphasis from Sean. Sean in his press conference talked about at the end of the season, talked about him and Zach Strief, discussing how do we fix the run game. And part of it was not having so many backs involved, but part of it was just getting better at running between the tackles. And ETN is better than RJ Harvey at that, but I think they want a true between the tackles power runner. So I think if they miss out on Walker, they probably pivot to like a Tyler Algier, a Rico Dowdle, maybe go back to J.K. Dobbins. If they're like so set on making a splash on the offensive side, I could see the ETN thing. I just think you could better allocate your money and not have to be redundant. I actually have him going to the Saints. It's hilarious that we have him going to each other's teams. I originally had him going to the Chiefs, and then I started looking around at like who else I had going to the Chiefs. I'm like, they're not going to have any more money, right? They don't have a ton of money. I think that the Saints make a lot of sense. I think Jeremiah Love is not going to follow you guys anymore. I think that the narrative now is Arizona, Tennessee, the Giants, right? All these teams above you guys. I really think he's probably going to end up in Tennessee. They're apparently enamored with him. I think that ETN ends up at the Saints. I think that, with the way that they structured the Alvin Kamara contract, they can get out of it. They gave Devin Neal and Estime some carries, and neither of them was amazing. How do you support your young quarterback? I just talked about it with Bo and Kenneth Walker. You go get him a solid running back in ETN. I think ETN's a good replacement for Kamara, right? You get yourself out of the Kamara contract, and ETN's that, he's your Kamara replacement, right? At a younger age, he's good in the pass game. He can run outside the tackles. I think that, it'd be great for Tyler Shough to get it back like this.
Yeah, I have no complaints with that. I actually had, you mentioned Tyler Algier as like the potential guy in addition to ETN or Walker for the Broncos. That's who I had. If we added Algier to our list, I had Algier to the Saints because I like that fit a lot, but I wouldn't mind ETN to the Saints at all. I do, like you just mentioned, it would fit the scheme a little bit more. In my eyes, and I guess they're probably viewing Devin Neal as more of the in between the tackles guy than ETN, and maybe you want Neal being more of the pound it back and ETN a little bit of the more do it all back. So I could see that being the next duo in New Orleans for at least the next 2 to 3 seasons, and I wouldn't mind that at all. Moving on, we have Alec Pierce. Ty, what are your thoughts on Alec Pierce, the top receiver in this class? Where do you think he goes?
Yeah, I think he's going to have a pretty big market because there's a lot of teams with a lot of money that need, a wide receiver. But ultimately, I think he's going to end up in New England, with them cutting Stephon Diggs. I think they desperately need a wide receiver. They have Booty and Kyle Williams, who are younger guys with some upside. But, Pierce isn't going to be able to end up back in Indianapolis with them re-signing Daniel Jones. They're desperately trying to find ways to create cap space. But I think unless they decide to trade Michael Pittman, which, even if you trade Pittman, there's no guarantee that you can bring Pierce back. So I got him going to New England. I think he'd be a really great deep threat. And, that's kind of what they love, those like receivers that, have a ton of speed. That's what Booty is. That's what Kyle Williams is. Is it redundant with what they have? Yes. I think maybe they could use a better route running receiver, but I think they're just looking to make a splash at the receiver position. Alec Pierce would be great. He's probably going to get 20 million plus, and they have a ton of cap space. So I got them going after Alec Pierce.
Yeah, I had the Patriots too. Another team that I think would be a great fit for him would be the Commanders. I think they have a lot of cap space, and a guy like that would be the successor almost immediately to Terry McLaurin. It's a very similar mold to Terry recently with how they use him. A lot of deep balls to Terry with Jaden Daniels at the helm. And I think Alec Pierce would be a great fit in that scheme in addition to McLaurin. And you're losing out, I believe, on Deebo Samuel this season. And so you just need another receiver in that room very, very badly. And I obviously could see them double dipping and going into the draft, getting a receiver, but I think Alec Pierce would be a great fit for them.
It's funny you bring a deep ball receiver to the Commanders because a guy that we didn't have on this list that we kind of talked about this before, but Rashid Shaheed, I had him going to the Commanders if, he doesn't end up back in Seattle, which it seems like Seattle might move on from him. We didn't have him on the list because he was so poorly used there, and he just, there's still questions about like what can Shaheed's role in an offense be? Did Seattle see something that they were like, we can't use this guy on offense? But I think that he's a great deep ball threat. We saw it in New Orleans, and he brings a ton in the punt and kick return game. So I think that he'd be a great fit for the Commanders.
Yeah, let me say this real quick about him. A lot of people have him going to the Raiders, right? Next, I've seen that mocked a little bit with Kubiak going over there. And let me say this, Kubiak used Shaheed so well on the Saints when he was there as their coordinator so well. He was utilizing him every single game. It felt like for at least 1 or 2 deep balls. Derek Carr, obviously though, is probably a top 10 deep ball thrower in the NFL. It's ridiculous. He's great at deep balls. Can't really do much else at a high level. And then he goes to Seattle, and he just disappeared from that offense in the deep game. It was insane. It's still the same coach, still the same system, and it just went away. So I wonder if he views the Raiders as a team that he would like to go to, because he didn't have a receiving touchdown, I don't think, at least in the regular season, since he played the Giants for the Saints last year. So it's interesting to see if he would want to go there. I had a team like the Chargers would be a really cool fit for him with Justin Herbert. His deep ball would be awesome to Rashid Shaheed. I don't think they've had a great deep threat since Mike Williams left that team a little while ago. And obviously Ladd and Quentin Johnson are solid, but I think Rashid Shaheed would be a really fun fit there in LA. And he also used to be in San Diego. Obviously he's from San Diego. Chargers aren't in San Diego anymore, but be a fun pairing anyways. Moving on to our second receiver here, we got Wan'Dale Robinson going. In my eyes, I have him going to the Giants, or not the Giants, sorry, the Titans, because Brian Dable is now there in Tennessee. I think it's a really good fit. He would be a great receiver for Cam Ward in that offense. Obviously, you have guys like Alec Pierce, Chimere Dike, and then you add Wan'Dale Robinson, a little bit of yak and things like that to that offense. I think would be a really good fit for them. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I also have him going to Tennessee. I think his twitchiness would be something that, he'd get open a ton of the slot for Cam Ward to make his life a lot easier.
Mhm.
Obviously, the Dayball connections there. The other, landing spot, I would love to see him in Denver. I think that he would bring, Denver's looking to make some type of a splash on the offense, right? If it's not Kenneth Walker, if he goes to Kansas City, maybe they target a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson. There's been talks about, the receiver position. He would bring something that's, kind of new to the offense. But I think, from every rumor that I've seen, him to the Titans is pretty much all but a lock and moving towards that direction. So I'm with you.
Moving on to our only tight end on this list, and maybe we mention another, but Ty, what are your thoughts on Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, another guy I got going to the Tennessee Titans. Well, let's make Cam Ward's life a lot easier. I think they go after Love in the draft. They add Wan'Dale and they add Dallas Goedert in free agency. They have Chig Akwanku. I think that's how you say his name. He is hitting free agency. I think they are due for an upgrade at the tight end position. Dallas Goedert, kind of, he's not going to be able to go back to Philly. They just don't have enough money. They have too many guys hitting free agency and just a lot going on there. So I got Dallas Goedert making the move to the Tennessee Titans. I honestly, I was like, where the hell else does he go? Because they have a ton of money and I need a tight end. I mean, there's some other maybe spots, but I'm interested to see what you have.
I just had him going back to Philly. Like you said, they do have a lot of not very much cap space, a lot of cap issues. It just makes sense. I don't know how big of a contract he's going to garner because he's not the biggest. I at his age, I don't see
Top
him
10 tight
being.
end.
He is, but he's had some injury questions in the past. I'm just worried about the contract that he's going to be able to be offered. But I will say this: then another team that I could see him going to, and I had Isaiah Likely here actually going as my fit for this team, but the Washington Commanders again. They have a lot of cap space. Zach Ertz, obviously injured. Ben Sinnott hasn't really panned out at all. I think that would be a great scheme fit because, it's similar to Ertz. I think he's a really great receiving tight end that knows his role, knows how to find open spaces in the zone, things like that. And that's what we've seen Ertz do in that offense. Could be a really great fit if they don't go the Isaiah Likely route, a little bit of a younger tight end.
I consider that too. I think, it's kind of the trope of like the former Eagles tight end that ends up back in the Commanders, or with the Commanders rather. And I thought about flipping those two, actually having Goddard in Washington and having Likely in Tennessee to kind of, fit the youth timeline. So I think either of those, would be great fits for those teams. I kind of forgot about the Commanders and that I had, Goddard.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good fit. We took Likely off our list. So, that kind of just popped up. Moving on from tight ends to the O-line side, the O-line aspect of the offense, we have Zion Johnson starting off. Obviously, the Chargers went and released him, and then they moved. I'm blanking on the center's name.
They released Becton. Zion's a free agent.
And then they just signed
signed
a
Biadez.
center. Miadez, yes.
Bozeman retired.
And because of that, them going center in the free agency class. I think they bring Zion Johnson back. He's still young, and I just think that would be a good fit. Obviously, they have a lot of cap space. They could go after a higher end offensive guard like David Edwards in this class. I just don't see it happen. I think they bring back a young offensive guard, even if they don't necessarily love that move. All the Chargers fans after the O-line this year, I think it's a solid move to just bring him back. But what are your thoughts, Ty?
Yeah, I think Zion honestly might be the top of the offensive guard class just because of his age in comparison to David
Yep.
Edwards or Elijah Vera Tucker's always freaking injured for the whole entire season. So, I think that makes sense as a move. Harbaugh's talked a ton about how awesome he is. If he doesn't end up back in the Chargers, I think the Raiders, one of their division foes, make a lot of sense. They're a team with a ton of cap space, need to make some improvements on the offensive line. With the assumption that they bring in Fernando Mendoza. I think Zion Johnson would be a great fit for them.
I do wonder, as a free agency pitch, how excited free agents are going to be about, we have the number 1 pick. We're going to get Fernando Mendoza. I wonder how they're pitching themselves to these free agents, because I think they definitely could win over a lot of free agents. It's just, the history of that team. How easy is it going to be to get guys to sign with them? And that's a question.
Well, the good thing is they only have 3 positions that they don't need to fill on the entire roster: running back, tight end, and quarterback. They have, they can pitch the entire free agent class because the defense sucks. They're going to trade away Crosby, and they don't have an offensive line and practically no receivers. So they could pitch them all and just throw money and someone will land there.
It is it's crazy to me that the Crosby situation, how it's still falling apart, even with a new era of head coach and just regime coming in. It's crazy to me. But
he's just ready for a change. And,
yeah,
we don't have him obviously on this list, but I think, he'd be great in either Dallas or Philly. There's the rumors with Philly are allegedly that Jalen Carter's been involved in some of that talk. So maybe the Raiders do have another position that they don't need to fill, and that'd be interior defensive line.
Yeah, and then it just frees up edge as
Right.
need. So they're just replacing holes with other holes. Yeah, it's nuts in Las Vegas. But moving on, Ty, to Tyler Linderbaum, a top center in this class, a young center. It's crazy that Baltimore, to me, even let him pop up into free agency. But what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, obviously with the Bears getting Garrett Bradbury today, that was kind of my number 1 spot for him. The Chargers also added Biadasz. There's obviously the Harbaugh connection there. I think it boils down to 2 teams at this point in time. It's the New York Giants, obviously because of John Harbaugh, and I think going back to the Ravens. At the end of the day, I think that the Ravens end up bringing him back. The Giants, they have John Michael Schmidt, and I think that he is a serviceable option for now, and they have some bigger holes on that team. I think, the obvious connection was, okay, Harbaugh's there, protect your young quarterback, but I think he ends up back with Baltimore. Baltimore has a little bit more money than the Giants do too, so I'd like him going back there.
Yeah, with the move that the Patriots just made that you just mentioned, obviously with the Bears, a team that has entered the conversation would be the Patriots. I don't know necessarily if they're going to pursue him, but the Patriots would be a good fit in my eyes. And then I do have the Giants here with Harbaugh. Another team to throw into the hat here would be the Titans. I think just bolstering your O-line, getting more protection around Cam Ward could be an interesting move. They have a lot of cap space, but
they did cut Lloyd Cushenberry too.
Yes, so it could be a good fit, but I do think that Baltimore, obviously, they need to make a push to bring him back. You can't lose out on a guy like him. When you have a franchise center and he's that young, it's worth going and paying the man. So I think that's definitely possible, them bringing him back. Moving on to offensive tackle, we have Taylor Decker here, a guy that was just released announced that he's not coming back today, yesterday for you guys out there. The Lions are moving on, and I think he just moves on to his division opponent and rival, to the Bears. Obviously, Ben Johnson was his coach on the offensive side of the ball in Detroit, and I could see him just moving on there to the Bears. It would be a good fit, and I think a left tackle is a little bit of a need for the Bears, so give him to Detroit or give him to Chicago from Detroit, and I think it would be a match made in heaven. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is one of the first Kansas City Chiefs signings. I got him going to the Chiefs to protect Pat Mahomes. I think he's obviously one of the best left tackles in the NFL, still at 30 plus years old at this point. But the Chiefs need offensive line help really, really bad. They should target an offensive lineman in free agency because they've drafted guys. It hasn't panned out. They needed an immediate fix on that offensive line, and so I got them going with Taylor Decker.
I think that's definitely a fair move too. I'm just interested to see where because they don't have that much cap space. They have some, they freed up a good amount. I'm just so interested to see what holes they decide to fill first on that team before the draft.
Listen, I beg for them to, like I've said a million times, I beg for them to go after a running back and not have an offensive line.
That's the thing is you see teams go after high-end running backs when they have holes on other things across the rest of the team, and it doesn't go well. We saw it with Genty last year with the Raiders. We've seen it with other players before.
Saquon with the Giants.
Yes, Saquon he had the one great rookie season, and then the rest of his years just seemed wasted. But anyways, moving on to defensive tackle here, Ty.
Oh, we missed a tackle.
Oh, Rasheed Walker. I did take him off my list here. I took him off my list completely.
Show some respect to Rasheed. Yo, Hammer's gonna be pissed. He's gonna be pissed. I think you might want to cut that out.
No, wait, hold up. I switched to Rasheed for a Shaheed Ty. I switched Rasheed Walker for Rashid Shaheed on my list here.
Wow.
Rasheed Walker. Obviously, I didn't have Decker going back to the Chiefs. I didn't even pick a landing spot for him because he's off my list here. I could see him going back to the Chiefs if they don't go and get Decker, like you just mentioned, just trying to retain him. But Ty, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think, it sucks for Hammer to lose this guy. I think Decker could have been another position for them to replace him in Green Bay, going to another division rival. But I got Rasheed Walker going to the Browns. I think, they're a team that's in need of offensive line help. They added Titus Howard. I think that they need a tackle on the other side, and they go out and get Rasheed Walker. They're going to spend a lot of money on offensive line, allegedly. So, give me Rasheed.
Yeah, I don't know why I said going and bring back the Chiefs. I had him going to the Chiefs, actually, and that's – but, yeah, I think the Packers – and who on the Packers did they have, drama with releasing him? He announced that he was leaving the team.
Garrett.
And then Rashawn Garrett.
I had him on this list originally
and just
because I thought he did get released.
Plucked it right back.
But he got hacked. My ass. He didn't get hacked.
It was so funny because Hammer, little eyesight into the Jenks Island group chat. Hammer said, "What did he say?" He was like, "Rashawn, see a bum," and then obviously the whole news that he's back happened, and
for now, and he'll probably get released now on Sunday.
Yeah, I just don't see. I don't see a way that he comes back after announcing that he's leaving. It doesn't really seem like maybe it was a power move. Maybe it was like, I'm posting that I'm leaving. I'm posting that I'm out of here. You guys need to offer me more money. Maybe it's that.
It was a full post too. And then Adam Schefter comes out and said, quote, he's not being released or traded.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Anyways, moving on from offensive tackles to your guy here, John Franklin Myers, the defensive tackle position here. What are your thoughts on him? Do the Denver Broncos bring him back, or do they let him walk?
Yeah, I hate to see him walk. I really want him to come back, but I think he's kind of just priced himself out of our range, and we feel comfortable adding another guy on that defensive line that, there's not a ton of pressure. No knock to JFM, right? He's obviously done a great job, but there's not a ton of pressure there when you got Benito, Cooper, and Zach Allen. Mm-hmm. And the way that we show defensive fronts, I think it's a more easily replaceable position. I got him going to the Tennessee Titans. He was with Rob Saleh in New York. Their defensive line coach was his defensive line coach with the Jets. They added Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson's tweeted 1,000 times about JFM coming to the Titans. They have a ton of money. I think that they need to add a guy next to Jeff Simmons. And this defensive line would be really, really scared with Jeff Simmons, JFM, Jermaine Johnson, and the possibility if they don't go after Jeremiah Love of maybe adding an Arvell Reese, a David Bailey. So I got them going with JFM to the Titans.
Yeah, I ultimately had him staying with Denver, and I think that's because I had the Broncos going after a cheaper option at running back with obviously Tyler Algier over guys like Travis Etienne or Kenneth Walker. They save a little bit of money there. They can put it towards their defense, keep their defensive line relatively intact, and I think that'd be a great move in keeping him in Denver. Moving on to the defensive end position or edge, whatever you would like to call it, we have Jalen Phillips starting off this list. A great edge that's younger at this position, 27, played for 2 teams last season, traded to the Eagles. And obviously, this is going to come to some surprise, but I have him going to the Saints. The Saints have let Cam Jordan, I don't even know where Walker just came in from. Cam Jordan walk And I didn't see that coming at all. I thought Cam Jordan was going to be the one out of their free agency class that they did bring back. I thought he was going to resign. They were going to figure something out. And they still could, right? Even after free agency starts, they could bring him back. But him even getting to the market surprises me so much. And it really makes me think that they're finally just set on resetting this franchise, going after younger guys, things like that. And I think Jalen Phillips would be a great fit in addition to Chase Young on the opposite side of the line. That could bring a lot of pressure from both sides, put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. And then their corners are an underrated group. They're not great, but I think they could turn the ball over on the opposing offense is a good amount. So give me Jalen Phillips to the Saints. I think it'll be a really fun fit. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Cam Jordan because I actually have him coming to Denver on probably like a 1 year, $7 million, $6 million deal. Move him to the inside. He's a bigger guy. I think he could play on the interior. But with Jalen Phillips, I got him going back to Philly. I didn't have Goedert going back to Philly. I think this is their top priority is to bring this guy back. He was so awesome for them on the edge. They have a little bit of money, and I think this is where they allocate it to Jalen Phillips.
No, that definitely would make sense. And let me just say this with Cam Jordan, the guy will not. He cursed out his former. I'm blanking on his name. Our defensive lineman coach McGrath, I think it was. But hated playing interior on the D line. Absolutely hated it. And maybe for Sean, he does it. Maybe for Sean would be the guy that gets
ring chase
and switch inside. Yeah, ring chase a little bit, but yeah, it'd be an interesting conversation to see if he moves.
He's getting older too, right? I know he had 10.5 sacks, but he can't be playing on the edge.
The 10.5 were there's probably like an asterisk next to him. A lot of pressure from other guys forcing court, but he did have a really good season last year. So I was surprised to see that he put up that number last season. Moving on, Ty, to Trey Hendrickson. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I got him going to the Commanders. I think the Commanders need an edge rusher. There's the possibility that they bring back Von Miller, who was productive in only playing like 30% of the snaps. I think he had 8.5 sacks. But I think that they needed a premier edge rusher. Hendrickson was floated to them around the trade deadline, around last offseason, right? Every time that we've ever heard Trey Hendrickson possibly getting traded, the Commanders have been a possible location. Like you said, they have a ton of money. I think that, they probably spend a little bit less on receiver with a guy like Shaheed. And then they go out and spend big money on Trey Hendrickson to be their star edge rusher and kind of chart the transformation of this defense.
I definitely could see it. And the only reason I don't have him going there was the age. And I have someone else going there that we're just about to talk about. But I have Trey Hendrickson going to the Cowboys here. I think it's a little bit of a cheaper option than the Max Crosby route for the Cowboys. Would still be a really great fit. And I think that defense has really turned it around compared to the first half of last season. They turned it around the back half. Adding Trey Hendrickson would only help even more. And I think they could afford it at the lowest end he's willing to go of his salary. I think that's kind of where they're at. And I think it would be their big splash move in free agency, but it would be worth it for them, even because they retained Pickens. You still have the rest of your offense intact. And I think it would be a really, really great move for them.
Yeah, I was close with it. I had him there for a minute, but I have some other guys going to Cowboys, and I really think that they end up with the Max Crosby trade at the end of the day.
I think that's fair too. If that does happen, I really wonder what they'd have to move for him, because I've heard all sorts of things: 2 firsts, 1 first, and a third. But like the Raiders have no leverage in their trading system. Like they have no leverage holding on to Max Crosby. He wants out. I don't imagine he would play for them if they end up keeping him past the draft or anything like that. I think he's going to want out either way. So they got to move him for whatever teams are offering. But right now it's the bidding war between most likely the Cowboys and the Eagles, it seems, but maybe there's a few under the radar teams in there as well. Moving on to Odafe Owe. I probably pronounced that wrong, but if I pronounced it right, Odafe Owe. That makes sense as well. Edge out. He's 20. I'm just going to blow right past it. 27 years old from Baltimore. And I have him going to staying in the DMV, and I have him going to the Commanders. This will be my third player going to the Commanders. They have a lot of salary cap. He fits the young scheme, the young wave of talent in the Commanders uniforms. And I think it would just be a great fit. I think he provides them with a little bit of the speed rush off the edge, things like that. A little bit of options off the edge there. And it, like, obviously Von Miller was a much different player with the age there and not playing as much. I think he provides you an option that you can stay on the field the whole game and provide some pressure. So give me away to the Commanders. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had him between two teams, and it kind of ended up being one of the other teams because where I put Linderbaum. I had him between the Chargers and the Ravens. I think, going back to the Ravens is obviously a weird situation because they did trade
Yeah.
him, but his defensive coordinator is the head coach there now. So obviously a lot of, familiarity with Jesse Minter. I think that they can kind of, work through their issues on why they decided to trade him. But with Linderbaum going back there, they're not going to have a ton of cap space. So I got him going back to the Chargers. They have a ton of cap. Khalil Mack's a free agent. Odafe always a free agent. They need to get an edge rusher. One of them needs to come back. I think that Owe is probably the smarter choice because he's younger. So I got him going back to the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I think Minter would be a great, obviously, very, very familiar with him. Could make sense. But yeah, I just don't see after you get traded from a team, maybe wanting to go back there. It's almost similar with Rashid Shaheed and the Saints, right? You get traded, go back right the next year. And that could be an interesting move for both of those teams, but we'll see how it plays out in free agency. Moving on, Ty, we have Devin Lloyd, a great linebacker prospect. Do you see the Jaguars trying to go and keep him, or do they let him walk? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Jaguars are going to find a way to keep him. They don't have a ton of cap space, but he is the heart and soul of that defense. He was amazing in pass coverage. He was one of the top-ranked linebackers last year. If they let him walk, there's going to be so many teams that are interested in him, right? Dallas, the Raiders, Denver, all these teams that are in need of a linebacker are going to be, trying to start a bidding war for him. But ultimately, I think he ends up back in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's a competing team. They have the opportunity to bring him back. I think there's a lot of familiarity in that defense, and they have a really good defense. So I think it only makes sense for him to end up back there.
Let me tell you my terrifying prediction here for my own sake. I have him going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if they if the Jaguars do let him walk. Obviously, Sonny Styles was a guy that was being mocked to the Buccaneers prior to that combine performance. Now that the combine happened, I think Sonny Styles is going to be out of their range. But if they go into this process and they're like, okay, Sonny Styles is not going to be on the board anymore. We need a linebacker. He fits that mold so well in that team, and I think he would be a great fit for the Bucs. But it would kill me as a sneaker.
Sonny Styles, there's a 0% chance that he makes it to Tampa.
Yeah,
0.
There's no shot in hell. So it just makes so much sense, Devin Lloyd to the Bucs, and I think it would be a really great move. Gets to stay in the warm weather down there in Florida, and I would hate it, but I think it's a good fit.
That would suck for you because he's a freak.
Yeah. Obviously, Shuck would still be able to outrun him off the edge, but we'll see. Moving on in the linebacker class to Nakobe Dean. Ty obviously just had Leo Chenal going to the Dallas Cowboys. I have Nakobe Dean going to the Cowboys. I think it would be a great fit for that team. And it's one of those things where you go from a rival, you're getting let go by that team, and you want to go to that rival now. And I think the Cowboys would be a great fit for him, adding some young talent into that defense, making them even better. It's a good fit. He's good in the pass and run game. So give me Nakobe Dean to the Cowboys. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought about him going there, but obviously I put Chenal there. I've been talking about this kind of all offseason long. I think that he'd be an awesome fit in Denver, just as the blitzing linebacker that he is. He's really, really good at blitzing. And that's kind of the Vance Joseph MO is to send a ton of guys. You got to be good as a blitzing linebacker. And earlier in the offseason, he came out and someone asked him, would you like to play for the Denver Broncos? And he said, yeah, I'd love to play for the Denver Broncos. If I don't end up back in Philly, that would be a perfect fit for me. And I agree, Nakobe Dean. So come on down to Denver and be that linebacker next to Dre Greenlaw.
That would be a really fun fit. That would be that. I think their defense would be better with him than, especially than like a guy like Singleton running around on the field.
Not even close.
The number of times Ty went to the group chat going on about Singleton, trust me. It's Nakobe Dean would definitely be worth it for the Broncos. Anyways, moving on to Alontae Taylor, a guy that coming from the Saints, I know a lot about. Obviously, as an outside corner, I don't think Alontae Taylor is a high level outside corner. He hasn't been his whole career. When he's put out there, he's struggled at times. Love Alontae Taylor. I love the energy he brings to the field, but he's not a great outside corner. He was getting burnt a lot on crossing routes, things like that, deep routes, got burnt a ton. But when you put him at the nickel, he truly does excel, especially in pass rush, things like that. He confuses the quarterback. He can cover guys in the slot a lot better than he can on the outside. So payment wise, I don't know if he's going to get necessarily that 20 million at least that he wants. He definitely wants that going into this free agency class. I don't know if that happens, but I see him reuniting with the Bears here and Dennis Allen. I think it'd be a really fun fit for him. And I just think it makes a lot of sense getting back into that scheme that he excelled in so much. So give me Alante Taylor to the Bears. Ty, what are your thoughts?
I had the same thing. With Nashawn Wright hitting free agency, they're in need of a nickel corner. I think it just makes way too much sense with DA there, and that those two reuniting is just a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Moving on, we have Jalen Watson, another actual corner here. Ty, what are your thoughts on him from the Chiefs?
Another actual corner. That's disrespectful.
I
I got him
swear.
going back to
No disrespect. No disrespect.
No disrespect. I got him going back to Kansas City. They just traded Trent McDuffie. They desperately need to bring this guy back. Otherwise, their corner room and that defense is just void of talent with, losing Chenault. If they lose Watson, another guy coming out that we'll talk about as well. And Chris Jones getting at this, older age. I mean, this entire team would just be, like I said, void of talent. So I got him going back there because they need to bring back a corner.
Yeah, if the Chiefs don't bring him back, I have the Steelers as a team that would be an interesting fit for him. Adding him to the opposite side of JPJ, I think that would be a really fun scheme there for the Steelers. And the Steelers are a team that I don't see them going all in this free agency. I don't see them doing that, but I think they add a couple key pieces to kind of build to that team for Mike McCarthy and in for the next few years instead of just building for this year. So I think Jalen Watson would be a really good fit if the Chiefs don't go and retain him. Moving on, we have Brian Cook, another Chiefs player that needs to be possibly re-signed. If the Chiefs don't bring him back, I think the Cincinnati Bengals would be a great fit. He is from the University of Cincinnati. He still has, apparently, I saw someone tweet out that he still has the Cincinnati skyline in his bio on Twitter. So maybe he was hinting at wanting to return to the city. They need some talent on the defensive side of the ball. He's a young safety, really good fit for that team. So give me Brian Cook to the Bengals here. But Ty, what are your thoughts? You have him going back to the Chiefs or leaving?
No, I think, Kansas City's not going to be able to afford him. I got them taking Decker. I got them getting Watson. Maybe if they add a running back. If he wants to win some football games, he will not go to Cincinnati. He will go to the Houston Texans, who need a free safety. They got Petrie playing the nickel. They got Bullock at the other safety spot, but they just cut, blanking on Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward was their safety last season. They cut him. So I think that he is a great fit at that free safety position for them and just elevates that defense even further. They got some cap space, so I think Brian Cook to Houston would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That is all of the guys on our list. Ty, were there any quick guys you just wanted to mention real quick?
No, I think we kind of brought up guys along the way that I wanted to cover. I mean, Algier, is an option. I think that Denver could be a spot for him if we don't go with one of these big splashier guys. But Mike Evans, I think he probably ends up back in Tampa Bay. Some of these other receivers like Stephon Diggs. I think there's a lot of questions up in the air about where he ends up. I honestly have zero clue. I mean, maybe state penitentiary is the answer for Stephon Diggs. But yeah, I think we kind of covered a lot of the guys along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And the one guy I was going to ask about was Mike Evans. If the Bills go after him still go after him after getting DJ Moore, I don't really see that happening. I think going back to Tampa Bay just makes sense. Be a lifer there in Tampa Bay makes the most sense. That'll do
Yeah.
it for this episode. Free agency starts on Monday, the legal tampering period, technically. Monday, that begins. Wednesday is the real start of free agency, but we wanted to get this out before Monday because as soon as the legal tampering period starts, that's when you're going to see all these guys being signed, quote unquote. And that's when the players are going to start being on the move all over the place. Free agency frenzy really does start on Monday. So we'll release this Saturday morning so that you guys can tune in, listen, give your thoughts in the comments down below on these guys. If you disagree, let us know. If you agree, or if there's names that we didn't have that you really want to talk about, and comment down below. Make sure to do that. Check us out on social media at Jenks Sound and wherever you get your podcasts at Jenks Sound as well. And we will see you guys next week with our next draft video.